guys, Sarah here. So this is my last video of 2021, and I thought that I would finish it off by doing another price list video of morphs that you guys have mentioned in my comments or have messaged to me that you are interested in seeing. I know that there's no way in the world that I'm going to be able to make a price list of every single morph that was sold in any given year, but I had made 3 lists before, and this is going to be the final list of just little ones here and there that you guys threw at me so that I could look up the prices for and make this video. Remember, this is the last day that you can get the 30% off TD30 on my website. I have masks and I have notebooks and t-shirts. You can get them in white or custom tie-dye. So all of that stuff is going to be 30% off. I have one more little announcement, and that is that I am going to be putting up the second edition of my very first book pretty soon. I'm hoping to do that at the beginning of 2022. Crossing fingers that I can actually get everything done by then. There's just some little things here and there that need to be adjusted, and then we can eventually put it up there. So thank you for listening to my announcements. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the video. Just keep in mind that these prices are not my prices. I did not make them. I literally just looked up the prices. So similar to the other ones, the original 3 that I did were all prices on Morph Market. However, for this list, I really couldn't find any current prices on Morph Market because either no one was selling them or whatever. So I had to go research prices, which means for a lot of these, I really didn't have a whole lot to go off of for averaging. So all of these are average prices that I saw online for these morphs. These are not prices that I made, and this video is not to make you feel like you paid too much or not enough for whatever snake you may have purchased this year. Prices in general in the US are up this year, but that doesn't mean that they're up everywhere. So this is just the US prices that I saw average for these morphs. But again, these are just what I saw, and I didn't have a huge pool to work with this time. For all of the other ones, I had at least 3 up to 10 sometimes different prices that I saw for the other mutations, and for these I was lucky if I got 2 to average. So and in some cases, since like I said, since these were ones that you guys had presented to me to look up, sometimes I only saw I could only find 1 for sale, or maybe 2, and they were the exact same price. So keep in mind that these prices are not necessarily going to follow the same trend as all of the other prices did in the other videos. I'm sorry to have to put out all these disclaimers, but I have been accused of purposely saying numbers that are too low or too high for whatever. So I'm just telling you, these are not my prices. These are prices that I have seen online. So I'm going to start out, these are in no particular order this time, and they're kind of pulled from everywhere. All the other ones were, single gene mutations, doubles, triples. These are just an assortment. The first one on the list is red factor. Just straight up red factor. So this is going to be a normal corn that's a little bit extra red. The average price that I saw was $85. And I guess that kind of makes sense. That was also the average price for just a hypo as well, and it's about $10 more than what the normals were selling for here this year. So or at least on average, like I said, and that makes sense to me because, again, especially if you're looking for aesthetics, a hypo is just going to take away a little bit of color. Just a regular red factor is going to add a little bit more color, but it's not going to be super different from your average normal. Buff Tessera was another one. The average price that I saw was $190. Would I buy it for this price? That's how I'm measuring this, by the way. I know I said it in the other videos, but I'll say it again. I am measuring my opinion on these prices based on would I spend that money on these mutations. And good price to me means good price for a buyer, not necessarily good price for a seller. I'm just saying, when I say it's a good price, it means it's worth buying for that price, in my opinion. So the red factor, yes, worth buying, in my opinion, for that price. That makes sense. Buff Tessera for being for $190. Again, I think that makes sense. I know I've been told that I overvalue Tessera. I think that a Tessera just by itself should be about $150. Buff is a sort of uncommon gene mutation that's a dominant sort of yellow look. And so I think that 190 makes sense, especially since Buff is kind of uncommon. And then you have your Tessera on top of that. Okati scaleless average that I saw was $580, which I guess makes sense to me. I figured it would be similar to just scaleless, which the average scaleless price that I saw was $435. And so this added like about $150 to the price just being Okati. Now I say that, but again, these are average prices and different people are going to sell things for different prices. And a lot of the prices that I was pulling in the first 3 videos were around the same time as like reptile expos were happening, and so some people might have had like a pre-expo sales or something, or pick it up at the expo for this price and it might have been cheaper or something like that. But so some of the prices are going to be a little bit different now because, you know, 2 or 3 months ago when I was researching the other videos, those prices are going to be different than what we see now. Fire Motley, the average that I saw was $135, which I was really surprised, but I think that was one of those that I only saw one place really selling any of them, and that was the price that they had. And it said from $135, so some of them were probably a little bit more expensive, but they were sold out, so the factors on whether or not, like how much they would sell it for on top of that, I don't really know. But $135 is what I saw for Fire Motley, and I personally think that it should be more than that. And I think that this place that I saw, like I said, this was the only place that I really saw any for sale this time, kind of generally sells things cheaper, and so I wouldn't necessarily trust that price. I would buy a Fire Motley for that amount because I think that that's cheap, but I do think that a Fire Motley is worth more than that. I can't remember if we talked about fire or not in the previous videos. We did. So the average fire was actually selling for only about $100. So if you compare it, that makes sense. But I would say that a Fire Motley is worth at least $200, if not more. A regular old stripe is the next one, which is kind of weird that we didn't put that in. But a lot of the stripe mutations were really uncommon this year, and even the ones that were being sold didn't seem to be selling for a whole lot. So just a regular old stripe, average price I saw was $135. That makes sense to me. I think that's a decent price. Anery stripe, average price I saw was $170. That also makes sense to me. Lavender stripe, though, the average price I saw was only $135. However, again, like I said, I didn't have as many places to pull from, so lavender stripe just didn't have that many. There was only like 1 or 2 places, and they weren't that expensive on those particular websites. So lavender stripe, like I said, $135, and then ghost stripe was for $300, which I think that is more. That was actually a coral ghost stripe that I saw, not just a ghost stripe, a coral ghost stripe. So that makes sense to me given the coral nature of that. I couldn't just find a regular ghost stripe anywhere. Like I just couldn't find a price, a 2021 price for them. Obviously I could go back to other years, but every year is going to be different, so I didn't really want to go back to other years, and I found a coral ghost stripe available, and so I went with that instead of just the ghost stripe. I think the ghost stripe was one that was requested, but I'm sorry, I couldn't really find a good 2021 price for that. The next one is Moonstone, which is a combination of anery and lavender, and I saw $145 price for that. I think that that's a little cheap. I would probably spend more than that on a Moonstone, but that's the only price that I could really find right now for that. It seems like lavender mutations and stripe mutations were kind of uncommon this year. I didn't see a whole lot of them. Orange is the next one, which is a combination of buff and amelanistic. And this one's, again, kind of uncommon. I believe we talked about a buff. We talked about buff tessera earlier. And orange is going for $315. Now, again, I only saw orange advertised like in one place, at least when I was looking today. And this is actually the 22nd of December on 2021 that I'm recording this. So, you know, I'm not really sure. I didn't really have like a whole average. $315 for an orange kind of seemed steep if you consider that the buff tessera was $190. But I don't exactly know what buff is worth because I don't breed them and I'm not like in that specific market. I would not consider buff to be worth that much myself, but that doesn't mean that it's not. It might be worth that to someone else. I don't think that I would spend that much money on that personally, but that's just me. Let's see. Amel Motley, which is one that we evidently did not go over in the previous videos, which is kind of interesting because they're pretty common. Average price $150. And that seems reasonable given these prices this year. If you got an Amel Motley for $150, that's great. Xanthic, which is caramel snow. So caramel amel anery. The price that I saw for that was $250. I am impartial, obviously, to caramel, and I love anything that's like yellow and white, which not all Xanthics get a whole lot of yellow, but I do think that this $250 price is somewhat reasonable. It might be a little steep, especially if you're just a keeper who's buying just for looks. You could get a snow for that's cheaper, and it's not going to really look any different. But whatever, you know, like, and if you're like going for a breeding project, then $250 is a good price regardless. One that I was surprised we didn't go over was Miami. We went over like Okatee and a few other things in the first video on this series, but Miami we didn't really hit on, and Miamis were selling for $115. I guess that makes sense because that's, you know, what is it, like $30 more than just a normal, and that makes sense to me. I would spend that much on a good Miami, one that did not have cinder in it. That's a whole other topic. But yeah, if it only looks like a Miami because of the cinder, I'm not going to buy it for that price. But unless I really wanted cinder, which I'm not going to get into. I've already talked about this in another video. I'll link it above. You guys can go check that out. The next one is caramel stripe. Again, another stripe. Stripes just were not that common, and I had to kind of dig for this one. Caramel stripe was actually more common, though, than some of the other stripes were this year. So I was able to get a more accurate, like, average, and the average was $220. And I honestly think that some of these other stripes, that's probably a more, like, honest average. I think that $220 is probably going to be a more honest average for the other stripes as well, like anery stripe and amel stripe and all these other stripes. Maybe not like some of the more common ones. $220 might be a little high still. And keep in mind, this is not including shipping. I'm not talking about shipping costs and all of this. This is just the base price. So, you know, if you want to pay $220 plus shipping, which is probably going to be at least $50, I think that is a little steep. I would pay $220 including shipping for any one of these stripe mutations, though. So just kind of keeping that in mind. If you like any of the stripe ones that I listed earlier, I think $220 with shipping is a really, really good price, and $220 plus shipping for any like the single G mutations plus stripe, that's kind of a lot to me, but you know, that's a $50 difference, and it's really up to you if you want to spend that extra $50. Anery Gold Dust is the next one, which is kind of a, I found that at the same time I found Xanthic. So Anery Gold Dust is Amel and Ultra, so Ultramel, and then Anery, so Ultramel Anery plus Caramel. So it's basically, it's going to be similar to your Xanthic because of the, it's just adding that Ultra mutation in there. So you have one extra mutation, and this is selling for $275 instead of $250. I think that makes sense. I think that those two might have been being sold by the same person, and so they have a very similar like mindset that I would. $275 I think is a good price for that combination. Cinder Motley was another one. The average price I saw was $160. And I think that that's fine, I guess. Cinder, if I remember correctly, Cinder was $110 on average, so I think that that's a good price comparatively speaking. Adding that Motley in there added about $50. Peppermint is one that we didn't talk about before, and that's a combination of Cinder and amelanistic, $150. I think that could be, it's close to the Cinder Motley, but I personally would price a Peppermint as higher than a Cinder Motley, because I believe that Peppermint changes that look, and you get that red and white look that looks really cool. I keep saying look because a lot of people do buy based on looks. So I think that a Peppermint could be equal to or more than a Cinder Motley personally, but I do think that $150 is a reasonable price. Last one I have on my list is a Tessera Motley, which we didn't talk about before. Average price for that was $150. And I guess that makes sense if you consider that a regular Tessera was going for $120. That Motley added about $30 onto the price, and that's kind of a common trend what we see. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I know that this is, even though it's 15 minutes long, it is shorter than my normal videos. And I hope you have a happy new year. I hope you had happy holidays. I will see you in 2022 with a new schedule. And when I say a new schedule, I'm still going to be posting every Friday, so don't worry about that. It's just going to be, you will get a Morph deep dive every month. You will get a book review every month. And you will get a Q&A every month. And something else. I haven't decided yet. There's 4 weeks in the month on average, and kind of trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I might actually do a show off every single month. That will be difficult in the winter, but that way, you know, starting in the spring, you guys can see everybody coming out of brumation. You can see the breedings that are going on. You'll be able to see the eggs hatching and all that kind of stuff. So I think that that'll be a really good setup, is that you guys will get you know, like I said, a book review, a Morph deep dive, a show-off video, or like updates on my current breeding projects, and then a Q&A or something along those lines, because I get a lot of questions in my comments, and you guys are always welcome to ask me questions in my comments, and those questions will very likely end up in a Q&A video in the future. So again, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.